Jeremy, Deborah, thank you so much. What a beautiful way to reflect and step into this conversation. Wow. Just want to take in Unity of Marin for a moment and what a privilege it is to be here and to be back with you. I wasn't going to acknowledge that I was a last-minute ad. I was the understudy waiting for Deanne to call. But since it's out there, let's do the transparency. It's a good thing. And I'm glad the part of the introduction that included that I am Ken Daigle's spouse. I have found in my life, despite all of my own accomplishments, I'm either known as Reverend Ken's husband, or Roma's dad, or Joshua's dad. I tend to be identified by the other people that I live with and that I love. Art and Kathleen, I don't know if it's like this in your relationship, but in our relationship, and I've heard that this is universally true, there are two types of people in the world. There are those who know how to load the dishwasher correctly, like a Scandinavian architect. And there are those who load the dishwasher like a raccoon on crack. My name is JD, and I am an architect. And I married a delightful raccoon. What we're going to talk about today is being present, not perfect. And I quickly acknowledge, as I prepared the talk this week, that I am far from perfect. But I am somebody who struggles with perfectionism. And so the lessons I'm going to share are not from somebody who has solved it all. It's somebody who is on the journey to focus on being present rather than perfect. And I've got some tips and strategies that I'll share and provide for you. But this is as much for me to hear and learn. In fact, maybe that's why the universe has me here and you all just get to witness it. But I needed to be reminded of the power of being present rather than struggling to be perfect. One other story that I think really illustrates this, for those of you who have been around Unity Marin for a while, Ken and I now own the house that Heidi and Steve owned for years and that Heidi's father had built. And wonderful story about how we ended up being the ones who purchased it, and that's for another time. But the moment I want to tell is the first time we hosted Unity of San Francisco for the holiday party. We bought the house in June, so in December, 5-6 months later, we held the first Unity of San Francisco party at the house after being told there had been years of Unity of Marin parties in that space. The way I found out that we were hosting the holiday party is I read the bulletin at church. I'm like, oh. This is what we're doing on Sunday, December 10th. Good to know. So immediately before the party, I am doing everything I can to have the house be ready and everything be perfect. And it reminded me of the scriptural story of Mary and Martha. And you remember the two sisters, and Mary was the one who was just present to Christ coming into the home. And Martha was the one that was, putting out the yogurts and making sure that the forks were in the right order and we have the right napkin. And she was doing all of the stuff about the party. And she was like, Jesus, tell my sister, she should be helping. And Jesus' response was, no, she's actually taken the better part because she was being present to the guests in their home. That's what Ken was doing. He was awesome being present to the guests in our home, and I was struggling with, are they gonna see that there is that stain underneath that chair? And it just illustrated for me that I at times can struggle with trying to be perfect rather than trying to be present. And the book that I'm gonna share from, and this will be on one of the slides at the end, is called Present Over Perfect, by Shauna Niequist. If this book were a movie, it would be a chick flick. And that's too bad, because for us guys in the room, there is some wonderful, wonderful material in here. And she travels more in the traditional Christian women's circle. She's spoken at a number of the women of faith sorts of conferences. And my sister, who is born-again Christian, very strong influence in my life, sent me this book just the year after it came out, when our daughter Roma was 1 year old. And I drank in each of the chapters. They are all super short chapters. And I paced myself that I didn't read through the whole book like you know, the way we binge watch Netflix. I just, you know, read pieces of it, because each of them had just such morsels of wisdom. And so I'm going to share a few of those morsels with you that I found particularly helpful to me, and for you to be able to benefit from. I loved the inspiration of, I am free to recreate myself, and fresh choices are possible. And that's what I invite you to listen to the next few minutes of, to think of what fresh choices might be possible to you. So I'm just going to, so you get a sense of her writing, I'm just going to read one short section from it, and then I'll give you what I consider the 7 of the lessons. Shauna writes, "What it seems the world really wants me to be is really skinny and really tired. If I could shrink and hustle, I'd be right there. Skinny and tired, shrink and hustle. This is what our culture wants us to be. Skinny and tired from relentlessly shrinking and hustling. To be clear, I have nothing against people who are really skinny, whether that's just how God made their bodies or because fitness and nutrition are central parts of their lives. You do you, skinny people. But I'm going to do me. And me is not skinny. I'm just not, and I've lived all my life, nearly 40 years, believing a fantasy that I'm just about 6 months from finally being skinny. Okay, 6 more months. Okay, 6 more. Oops, I don't know what I was doing the last 6 months, but 6 months from now, for sure. You know what? 6 months from now, I'm pretty much gonna look like this. How do I know? Because I've basically been the size I was since I was 14 years old. I think my body is trying to tell me something, and it's essentially that, hey, crazy lady, this is what God gave you, and you're sort of the last to know. And so at long last, I'm making peace with medium and choosing to be happy, rested, not exhausted, not afraid, not wired, and panicky all the time. This is countercultural, and this is rebellious. Exhaustion and starvation are the twin virtues of what that world wants, but I will not live there anymore. I will practice hospitality, the offering of grace and nourishment to myself. Instead of being starved and small, I will be medium and I will be happy. I will be medium and I will be happy. As we, yeah. And so with that sense of grace and nourishment, let me offer, I think she's got 47 chapters in her book. I'm just going to pull 7 of the lessons that I found particularly useful to look at in terms of being present, not perfect. First, put down the phone. I'm not going to call out the person in row 2 whose phone rang during service already. Thank you for not answering, okay? I've been in situations where people are like, oh, I'm in church right now, I can't talk. I'm like, you're in church right now, okay? We are connected to our phones. There was a Disney several years ago hired one of the major consulting groups and wanted to have research done about what children paid most attention to as they visited Disney World and Disneyland. So they hired this group of consultants for a 3-day engagement to go through the park and figure out, of all of the things that the kids could pay attention to, what drew their attention the most. Half day into it, the consultant said, yeah, we got this. Disney said, no, we paid you for 3 days. We want to be sure. Go spend time in the park for 2.5 more days. They're like, we got this. Go out. So they went back 2.5 days, validated their research. The thing that kids were most drawn to was mom and dad's phone. Because that's where mom and dad were putting their energy. And that's what made the children want to be there rather than with Goofy or in the castle or whatever. And sometimes as a parent, like, we pull our phones out to get a great picture. And then when we do, oh, that text came in and I've got to let them know I will actually be using slides in the presentation, or whatever it is that draws our attention. And we stop being present because something else drew us in. Ken and I try to do device-free dinner, and we're to the point now that we're pretty good about it. And if there is something that we really need to pull the device out for, we get permission from the other people at the table. Or Roma, who's now 8, will say, you can do that, but you should go out in the hall. I'm like, okay, go out in the hall, you know, look up the date and then come back in and say, oh, okay, it's November 29th. But focusing on the fact that never before have we had such a distraction to being present with us 24/7. And often it's the first thing we pick up and touch in the morning and the last thing we touch as we go to bed at night. So put down the phone. Second, renew with meditation. You make it remarkably easy here right before service that people can come in and begin the service with 15 or 20 minutes of meditation. Personally, I use, no, this is going to contradict the first one, I use the Headspace app, but I find that if I can get up before Ken and the kids are up, and I can spend, you know, I can put on the meditation and do the breathing and listen to the reflection, it just sets my day in a different level of pace. And it's funny because, okay, I'm pushing 60. I have long moved past the need for merit badges that I had when I was an Eagle Scout. I was an Eagle Scout, by the way. But the little badges on the app mean something. I went 90 days without missing. Like, it allows me to have that validation of taking what I know I need to do. Even just 1 minute of meditation, 1 minute of breathing while you're waiting in traffic, you're waiting for the light to, or I had a woman I worked with, whenever she turned on the computer and it goes through that setup at the beginning of the day, that was her meditation time. She goes, I know once the computer is on, I'm not going to get another moment to meditate, and that's what I take for myself. So whatever you need to do, renew yourself with meditation. The next one is establish eye contact. There is no greater symbol of presence and, and sense of connection than direct eye contact. Now, in my other job, as was mentioned, I do public speaking training. I taught at Stanford for many years, and now I have my own practice and teach part-time for USC. And the key lesson, the very first lesson in public speaking, is to look directly at the people in the audience. And to actually have 4 to 7 seconds that you actually have a moment with somebody before you go to someone else and you have a moment there. And that simple strategy of looking directly at people and having that moment of connection lets them know you're present to them. Now, my children, and I don't think they talked about this, but they both do the same thing. When they don't have our attention, they make it very clear. And they will grab with both hands and pull my icon into the Lego that has just been built or the artwork that has just been drawn, because they want to be sure I am focused, because they know eye contact is a symbol of me being present to them. And when I'm not, whether it's in my phone or in a conversation with somebody else, they recognize it and they want that sense of eye contact. Look and really see, because our eyes are the window to the soul. Bring your whole body into that eye contact and connect with people. The next item, and as I put this together, I was reminded of some of the lessons from the book that I've lost over the last 7 or 8 years. Starting the day outdoors, starting the day even if it's just 1 minute that you step out onto the porch and you breathe, take one of those big, deep belly breaths and breathe in the fresh oxygen. If on your way to run to the car, you just take a moment and go, we live in Marin County. We have outdoors available to us right here. Do we take time to recognize? We take time to draw that in and bring that in. If you can pause for a sunrise or a sunset, like the beautiful ones we get on the West Coast here, if you can add to your drive or your walk a special view, like there's something for me that as I pull out of the Robin Williams Tunnel and I see the Golden Gate Bridge for the first time each drive, it's like, wow, we pay a tax, both financially and emotionally, to live in San Francisco, to live in the Bay Area. We should take advantage of some of the benefits of that. And that view is one of those for me. So doing something that lets you begin the day outdoors. Next is to express acknowledgement, to pay attention to the little things and let somebody who waited on you in a restaurant or took great care of you in your car when you took it in for repair, or was just more polite on the phone than you would expect somebody from United Airlines to be with you. Like, to take a moment and say, I appreciate that you did that. Not, as you get off a flight and think, thank you, thanks for flying, thanks. No, not that superficial, but to really say, wow, I appreciated the way that you started service off with the inspirational reading and the way you made that present for all of us. Like, to give people that moment of acknowledgement. One of the parenting classes that Ken and I took several years ago said the ratio that you shoot for as a parent is 17 to 1. 17 acknowledgments, compliments, praises to the 1, I really need you to empty your clean clothes out of the laundry hamper and put the laundry hamper back by the dryer. Ooh, 17, I don't think I can. Man, if I hit 1 to 1, I'm feeling good on a day. 2 to 1, I'm like, whoa, rock star. 17 to 1 is what children need in order to feel that they are acknowledged, loved, and recognized. So that's aspirational, but shoot for something that is greater than just going through life without acknowledgement. I had forgotten about this tactic, and I'm going to start doing it again. My permission, as an entrepreneur, as a self-employed leader, my permission to send my first email in the morning is, have I already sent something that acknowledged somebody from the day before? And to sit down and say, what happened yesterday? Who can I send a quick note to? Doesn't have to be long, but it lets me start with putting good out into the world, putting gratitude, putting acknowledgement out into the world before I start replying. And I'm all of a sudden reactive rather than proactive. Some people do gratitude lists on a regular basis, either in a journal or on your phone. If you have somebody that's a partner that you can share those gratitude lists with, that just lets acknowledgement be a part of who you are and a part of what sources you. And inside of that, to then also look at how you can nurture all of your senses. We have 5 senses, and too much of the time we just, it's just what we look at, what we see on the screen, or maybe what we touch on the screen. I don't think that's legitimately the feel of touch. For me, one of my favorite ways to engage that sense of touch is I have an Afghan that was made by a woman who was spouse to the Presbyterian minister in my hometown while I was growing up. I grew up Roman Catholic, but we were good friends with the Thorns, and Mrs. Thorns is my only real role model of what it takes to be a spouse of a minister, because our priests in my parish didn't have spouses. I think that was by design. But anyway, we leave that one alone. But Mrs. Thorns was a great baker and a great sewer and knitter, and she made Afghans. And I still have one of her Afghans with her little Made by Margaret Thorns label at the bottom of it. And I keep it on the leather chair in my office, and at times when I'm stressed and I need comfort, or one of my kids comes in and that's what they need, I use that Afghan for that, and that sense of touch. Maybe for you, it's smelling the flowers in your garden or the flowers that have been brought into your home. Maybe it's tasting mint, tasting fresh mint and having that on your tongue. Maybe it's cooking a big pot of spaghetti or a big pot of sauce or a soup, something that gets smells going. But being thoughtful about how you can engage all of the senses. One of the volunteer capacities that I do, I volunteer as a crisis counselor on the crisis text line. So one night a week, usually Friday or Saturday night after the kids are in bed, I'm trained and I field text messages from people who are in crisis. And sometimes this can be like suicidal, bipolar, terrified of violence that's happening in their house or in their neighborhood. And sometimes it can be, I don't know how to talk to my mom about this. I don't know how to tell my son this. And it's all via text messages. One of the techniques that I have learned there is a grounding technique where I will, over text, I'll say, you seem very upset. Can we do something that will help you ground yourself? And they're like, sure. I say, okay, I'm just gonna ask you some questions I want you to answer. And the first question I ask is, what are 5 things that you can see? And they type their response and I type my response. I say, great, now what are 4 things that you can touch? They type their response, I type mine. What are 3 things that you can hear? And they type theirs, and for me, it's usually like 1 o'clock in the morning. It is really quiet, but it's the fan on my computer. Sometimes it's one of the coyotes or wolves that I can hear calling in the distance. Sometimes it's the click of my responses. Okay? But what are 3 things that I can hear? What are 2 things that I can, we're in the right place. What are 2 things that I can smell? And what is 1 thing that I can taste? In the time it takes for me to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that other person and I have both gotten present and grounded to have the text conversation that we're getting ready to have. I rarely have had anybody refuse to do it with me when I offer, and every time I do it, I'm brought into a different place, and they have told me they're brought into a different place. Because we're nurturing all of the senses, not just what do I see on the phone in front of me. It's also fascinating to me that the phone that brings us so much challenge, and particularly for young people, depression, can also be the source of an opportunity, a resolution to that. And so I love that that's part of what the crisis text line gives to me. Next, and finally, is to take time for yourself. Figure out what that is. For me, it's a mani-pedi. And I needed one before today. I don't have one that I can show off to you in hospitality. Maybe it's watching Hulu. Maybe it's calling a friend that you haven't spoken to in a while. Maybe it's a particular meal or a particular place you go visit, or looking back at photos of a different time and a different place. Whatever it is that nurtures you, you have to take that time for yourself. Right now, I'm at a point in my career and my life that I'm traveling again after COVID, and I'm spending more time on planes than I want to. But I love when I'm on the plane and they make the announcement, in the event of an emergency, please be sure you put your own air mask on first before taking care of those around you. And it just reminds me, as a parent, as a teacher, as a coach, as an adult, as a leader, as a manager, I have to be sure I'm taking care of my own oxygen in order for me to be of value to the people around. In the Rooms of 12-Step, we teach that you are in danger whenever HALT is present. If I'm hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, those are signs that I may be close to a slip or close to a difficulty in my life. And you don't have to be in recovery to recognize hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Those are not good places to go into a conversation with my spouse or my boss or my child. But no one else is going to manage those for me. I have to manage them myself. I have to be sure that I take time for me. So, in summary, this then is the list. Put down the phone, renew yourself with meditation, establish and hold that eye contact, start the day outdoors, express acknowledgement, nurture all your senses, and take time for yourself. And before you snap those pictures, I've got one more strategy for you. If this is hard for you to remember, it actually just spells present. Now you can take your pictures. And I had to engineer it a little bit to make that happen. But even in the engineering of that statement, it helped me remember. Am I taking time for myself? Am I engaging all the senses? Am I really establishing eye contact? And so that is my wish for you. In a world that is increasingly polarized, conflicted, disconnected, now more than ever, we need people who will prioritize being present and letting go of trying to be perfect. And that's what my wish and my offering is to you, and that's what I hope you can take from today's conversation. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you.